Greetings, Tezos Nation. Welcome to another edition of TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. Joining me today are Vinciane Jones, Art Vertical Partnership Manager, and Aleksandra Art, Head of Arts, both from Trilitech. Vinciane and Aleksandra are joining me today to talk about recently announced partnerships with the House of Electronic Arts, aka HEK Basel, and the Museum of the Moving Image, aka MoMI, and what partnerships like these represent for the Tezos art ecosystem and the community of artists, builders, and collectors who call it home. Hi, Vinciane and Aleksandra. Where are you right now, and how's the weather?
Hi, Stu. We're both in London, and the weather is typically what you'd expect from the UK, i.e. rain.
I.e. rain and gray. To get the ball rolling, we always like to give our guests the chance to introduce themselves a little bit and share about their journey into the blockchain space and the Tezos ecosystem. Aleksandra, maybe we could start with you. What has your journey into this amazing space been like so far?
Thanks for having me. So my journey was an adventure, I'm sure, as for many people. I've been working first in the more traditional art space, then in 2016 sort of moved towards working with arts and technology, and working more, I guess now it's in the traditional sense of integrating technology in the art world. And then I would say about 2019, 2020, slowly started making my way into crypto art and art on the blockchain. And through some of the curation that we were doing, HEK launched, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. The rest is history indeed. And Vinciane, what can you tell us about your journey to becoming Art Vertical Partnership Manager at Trilitech today?
I started out with a very sort of traditional background, studying history of art with a very traditional degree. And after doing a few internships in museums and a media platform, went on to work for an e-commerce platform that sold artworks. And so that was my first introduction into the world of art and tech. And I think from that moment on, I was like, I love how fast moving it is. I love how interesting it is. I love how it can give opportunities to artists and collectors in ways that didn't exist before. And then that kind of snowballed from there before I discovered the world of Web3 art. First through being introduced to it via certificates of authenticity using the blockchain. And then I actually collected my first NFT on Tezos and have not looked back.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about what appealed to you about Tezos in particular and made you decide to get involved in this ecosystem?
I think it's probably what you hear from basically everyone that you ask this question to, is that there is a real sense of community, a real sense of experimentation, of wanting to try something new, and creating a different system than the one that existed before. And also the accessibility, both from in terms of like the people's openness to both art forms and onboarding people who are new to the space, and accessibility in terms of price point as well, especially when you're just trying something out in a new space. It can be easier to start from that. So that was kind of my first introduction, but it was really the variety of artworks and the sense of community that I found.
Okay. And Aleksandra, can you tell us what you think has made the Tezos art ecosystem such an appealing destination for artists and their work?
Well, that can't be answered in one sentence, but I think what really happened in March 2021 was a collision of several forces. There was the post-COVID nature of a lot of people being at home, just discovering NFTs. I think it was just before Beeple blew up, and you had artists from Global South, from whom Ethereum fees were like, what the hell is this? Creative coding communities led by Memo Acton and Johnny Lemercier, who made viral articles about the carbon footprint of alternative popular blockchains at the time. And then you also had this whole idea of for the first time, you can actually own a digital asset and it's yours. And all these big artists together started flooding the blockchain, and Tezos was the most sort of like the easiest thing to onboard, and it blew up. So communities would share with each other. You would have pioneering artists like Aleksandra Art or Tyler Hobbs released his first NFTs on Tezos. Like you had all these like creative coding communities talk between themselves and amplify it. And at the beginning, it wasn't about selling. Like you couldn't even sell on HEK. Like it was about just like that sense of ownership and connection and trying something new. And I think also a pivotal moment, obviously later Ethereum became more efficient, you had more L2s, but I think a pivotal moment was also Tezos Foundation stepping in and providing a ton of funding for initiatives like Vertical Crypto Art Residency or Proof of People, Art Basel, being still, to be honest, one of the most biggest presentations of blockchain art in the traditional art world sense, Serpentine Gallery, Musée Orsay, numerous exhibitions and conferences, NFT Art Day Zurich, New York. And so what happened is a lot of these curators and platforms and marketplaces and artists were also empowered to continue doing what they love doing. And I think the intersection of these different things resulted in a very interesting culture, very academic culture. Like you have University of Vienna, where the whole department has an object gallery. You have people in New York, all over the world, sort of understanding the legacy that was established behind the chain, which we see to this day. So I think we are, one of the many people who kind of were building towards this space.
Okay. And speaking of to this day, as I mentioned off the top, one of the main reasons you're both joining us today is to talk about the recently announced partnerships with HEK Basel and Momi. But before we get into those specific partnerships, I know you touched on quite a few there. But Vinciane, I was hoping to get your thoughts on what partnerships with established institutions like these in the art world mean for the Tezos art ecosystem. Like, why are these types of partnerships so important?
I think for multiple reasons, and it will depend a little bit on the institution that we're partnering with. But one of the reasons is anchoring the space with institutions who provide that kind of voice of leadership in the space. So I think that's one of them. I think it's also associating art on the blockchain with the legacy of digital art that's come before. I think nowadays things are starting to change, but I think at the beginning there was a lot of the sense that this came out of nowhere, whereas digital artists have been creating art using digital tools since the 50s and earlier. So there is an existing legacy of digital artists, and this is only the latest evolution, iteration of the ways in which digital artists are able to connect with art enthusiasts, collectors, and other artists. So that is one of the reasons. Another reason is, of course, museums and institutional spaces provide education and meeting spots, really, for those who want to learn more about art. So it provides that platform for people who might not normally be exposed to art on the blockchain, who might not search out for object, who might not search out for Tea, to encounter these artists in environments that they do visit. So they might be people who are passionate about art, but just haven't stumbled upon this kind of art yet. And so I think those are two very important reasons for working with institutions. We're also lucky enough to work with institutions, and I think I'll talk a little bit more about this when talking about Momi, where the people who work at the institutions really understand the blockchain as well, really understand the art that's being made today, and help contextualize that art as well.
Okay. Yes, we will get to Momi, but I'd like to start out talking about the recently announced partnership between the House of Electronic Arts, also known as HEK, which I believe is located in Switzerland and has a bit of a history with the Tezos art ecosystem already. Aleksandra, what can you tell us about that partnership and what it means?
So yeah, you're correct. I think it goes back to 2022. Tezos Foundations supported Art Basel's first iteration of dialogues and panel talks featuring sort of like arts on the blockchain and inviting artists and curators. And so as part of that, the director Sabine was able to open that conversation as well. Sort of like, what does it mean for a museum to be involved in this whole space? And HEK was actually among the first museums to start experimenting, not only collecting, but also releasing art, also launching a DAO, also launching a virtual environments in which they're doing exhibitions as part of the partnership we have right now. And so similar to what Vinciane said about MOMI, there are museums which have that legacy of not only relying on outside experts, but actually having people in-house who understand the technology and push forward for exploring how this technology can have an impact and benefit sort of digital artists working with the medium today.
And I understand that partnership includes a strong educational component. Can you talk a bit about what you're hoping the art fans who engage with the exhibitions connected to the HEK partnership will learn about blockchain and Tezos-based art?
That's an excellent question. Any partnership goes both ways to make the most of it. So there's the element of outside audience learning about blockchain, but then there's also an element of our circle, our ecosystem of creators learning about how how institutions work, how they approach curation. So we're really interested in seeing that kind of intersection. And the curators that we're inviting, they also operate at the intersections of sort of the crypto world and more traditional art ecosystems. And so I think the most important part in all of that in terms of education is the exchange of knowledge. And every virtual exhibition encompasses the curator working individually with all these 6 artists, sort of hand-holding them into either like for them learning, how to approach their practice to work within the framework of the show, but also all the artists that are participating are going to have their works released on object. So maybe for some of them, it will be like the first time they're able to do a sale. Every show will have a virtual opening. There will be an on-site kiosk. There will be a physical presentation in the summer when Art Basel is taking place in Basel. And there's also part of the Embark workshops, working with other institutions to do a presentation about the partnerships, the learnings, and what are some of the previous best practices we've had with other museums.
Very cool. And Vinciane, we also saw the 24-25 partnership with the Museum of the Moving Image renewed for 25-26. Can you talk a bit about what has made this particular partnership so successful and what it looks like in 2026?
I think it's very exciting to have had a partnership for 1 year and then renew it again, because it means that we have a really close working relationship with the Museum of the Moving Image. We work very closely with Regina Harsani, and she is an amazing curator of digital arts. And so it's really a collaboration with the museum. And it's a place where both of us, Aleksandra and myself and Regina, we both bring in knowledge, expertise, and work together to build on that and make something stronger. Last year, for our partnership with the Museum of the Moving Image, it was all about museums without walls. So how can we extend the reach of the museum beyond its walls? And we worked with 15 artists, showcased 15 artists on the museum's media wall, which is a 50-foot long space where artworks are projected right at the entrance of the museum. So any museum visitor sees these works. And alongside that, we also had what we call a minting station, where we showed and visitors could collect for free an NFT created by the artist that was essentially an artifact and an element of the larger artwork that was displayed that visitors could take home for free. And even visitors outside of the museum, beyond the walls, could also collect this NFT. So it was a great introduction for the broader public, both to the artist's artwork and also to NFTs and what does it mean to own a digital work of art. And so that project was broken down into 3 different curations. We had Easel Engine exploring games, game design through art. We had community curation, where we actually invited the public to vote on which artists would be shown at the museum. So it was really also about decentralizing curation and who gets to make these decisions within museums. And we also had compositions in code, which spotlighted artists working with processing and paired them with artists working with P5JS, and showed them side by side in the museum. So that was more of a, I guess, a technical discussion about art and code.
Okay. And I understand the MOMI partnership also includes a public workshop track called the FA2
Yes.
Fellowship. What can you tell us about that?
So actually for this year, so in our renewed partnership, we're delving deeper, I guess, into the more technical themes that we explored in composition and code, but this time we're diving into the blockchain and what does it mean to create on the blockchain, but also with the blockchain. So what does it mean to treat the blockchain as a creative medium? And so that partnership comes with 3 different components. So the first component will be the exhibitions on the MOMI's media wall. Currently, we have a work being shown by James Bloom and Gottfried Jaeger. Next week, there will be a work opening by Sarah Friend and Yiwon Song. And so these are artists who are experimenting with the blockchain, but really getting into the nitty-gritty, writing their own smart contracts, thinking about the ways that the blockchain can be used and played with beyond just being used as a database or a ledger. And then alongside that, because we know that topic is not necessarily something that everyone's explored, it does require a certain level of technical knowledge. We also ran and are running the FA2 Fellowship program. So this is a public series of lectures. Anybody could join. We started actually last year. And we've now completed most of these lectures, but we do have a Telegram group that is open to anyone. So if anybody wants to watch the recordings, the link to the Telegram group has been widely shared in various tweets. So please feel free to join and learn more. But we had engineers both from Trilitech, from the object team, talk about how to create a smart contract. So understanding the Tezos blockchain, understanding Smart Pi and Michelson, and understanding what are the kind of some of the quirks, some of the advantages, how do you play around with an FA2 smart contract on the Tezos blockchain? And we had some really interesting discussions and questions come up from artists and creative coders who are participating, who are, I think some questions that engineers maybe are not expecting. But it was a really fun encounter of what happens when an engineer who's maybe not thought, about how to break something, meets an artist who's like, well, how can I push it to its limits? And so the artists and participants of the FA2 Fellowship are currently working on their own projects at the moment. And there'll be a series of crit sessions where they can join and be given feedback, both by the rest of the cohort and Regina, Alex, and myself. And then the idea is at the end of spring, that one project will be selected to be shown at MOMI.
Very cool. This question is for either/both of you to field. In addition to fostering partnerships like these with established institutions, your team at Trilitech is also quite heavily involved with several other community-based initiatives, like the Art on Tezos brand, its Beyond Open Call initiative, in-person events like Art on Tezos Berlin. What has participation in initiatives and events like those taught you about the Tezos art community as it exists today?
That's a wide question. I would say it's the other way around. What has being part of that community resulted in launching this brand? And so I think that's my opinion, and Vinciane will probably have another one because her journey was different. For me, I started minting probably the first week of HEK launching, trying elements, writing manuals. I hosted 5 panels at Proof of People, spoke at Tezos New York. So I felt always a very heavily big member of that community. But what I noticed when I joined this role, it was I never really I never applied for a grant. I was never interested in like what's happening there. For me, it was like what am I doing? What am I contributing? And so I learned that there were a lot of things spread out, and there's so much support that people on the other side don't know about. And so how do you find these opportunities? How do you find these resources? How do you bring everyone together and kind of like connect them? It was insane to see that a lot of people never met in the ecosystem. So I think what we all kind of like realized last summer is, why don't we do that, almost like a destination, an umbrella that helps with discovery, that helps with connecting people, that has a bit more of a clarity in messaging, and start incorporating all the different things we're doing into like a little bit more of like an organized form of chaos, as opposed to like, because a lot of people, maybe they see the HEK partnership, the other thing, but they don't see all the things that are happening behind the scenes. And so the Beyond Open Call, the MOMI micro grant open call, the Love is Blind, matching money with collectors to spend on art, that is all for the community. And monthly, there are like several initiatives a month happening. And I think that kind of like offered a better resource for people to be more aware of these.
Well, it makes a lot of sense when you explain it that way. That so you're participating in the community, you're a part of it, and you saw a need for this brand and for these types of events, and then this was built to fill that need. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, in a way, like it's a reflection of what already exists, just in a better, presented way. Yeah.
Okay. And in those interactions, as a part of this community, the two of you being deeply embedded parts of that community, what has it been like interacting with the artists and collectors and builders who make up the Tezos art ecosystem through events and initiatives like these?
Do you want to go, Vinciane?
Yeah. I think the level of like care and commitment and creativity is like always really impressive. And there are so many people who contribute to the community and the ecosystem every day. I think recently we've been chatting with the Taya team, and the fact that a DAO is maintaining a marketplace is amazing. Like this is what the blockchain is for, really, for communities to come together and work in tandem and through systems that are being enabled to work in that way through systems provided by the blockchain. So I think that's incredibly exciting to see that come out of the Tezos ecosystem. I think artists, we were blown away by the applications for the Art and Tezos Beyond call. There were so many ideas there. And so I think it's really exciting on a day-to-day basis to see all of that happening, and in so many different parts of the world. So we've worked with communities in Latin America, to the Philippines, to Europe, to North America, and beyond. Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. And here we are in February of 2026. There's already been a couple of these things announced. What other community events and initiatives does the Tezos art community have to look forward to as 2026 rolls along?
We just printed the stickers. We released the Arts on Tezos stickers.
Can we see one?
Well, it's on my laptop's back, so
okay, fair enough.
With the camera to show it. But I think people posted about it on Twitter from Berlin. We could find actually some posts. And so there is the Mac Leon opening show of Callan and Julianne together with Agoria's accompanying performance on March 5th, which marks the opening of their exhibition at the museum, which is very exciting. And they're producing a series of works that will almost like work as an educational physical piece that you can like scratch and like claim an NFT. And there will be the opening night, and then also the next morning, like a little talk. So we're hosting some people who are in France. And then for ETHCC, it's not fully announced yet, but TezDev is coming back, and there will be a very incredible art show. So for everyone that's coming to ECC this March, definitely save save some time to stop by and experience the Arts and Tezos After Dark event.
Cool. This is all great stuff so far. I'm excited to learn more. But before we dive into the nitty gritty, are you ready for the world famous TezTalks lightning round?
Oh, no. Yes.
Okay. Then it's lightning round time. Remember, there are no wrong answers. This is just for fun so our viewers can get to know you a little bit better. If you could each give a short answer to each question, I think that would be great. Number 1, are you a night owl or an early riser?
I'm a night owl.
Probably an early riser.
One of each. Exercise or naps?
Exercise.
I said neither originally. I don't really exercise too much, and I don't nap either.
Okay, neither. Pizza or sushi?
Pizza.
Sushi.
Okay. What's your favorite country to visit for a vacation?
Preferably warm and with a beach.
Okay.
I would say I love going to France. I'm half French. I love seeing new parts of the country.
Lovely. If you were elected king of the world, what's the first thing you would do?
I would rename myself to a queen.
Okay. Good move.
I would declare world peace.
Beautiful. Name one thing you will never do again.
Okay, that one was a good tip from Vinciane. I'll probably won't be able to mint on Nifty Gateway again.
Okay.
I think I would never do again. Probably nap. They just don't work for me.
Fair enough. What is the secret to happiness?
Choosing happiness.
Choosing happiness. Okay.
Appreciating the little things.
Beautiful. Do you have any pets?
Yes.
What kind of pet?
I was wondering about this question. I'm like, how is this the end of the question? It's a Boston Terrier. Her name is Alba.
Beautiful. And Vinciane?
I don't. Alex's dog is very cute.
You can share. And finally, what's your favorite thing to do on a rainy day?
Obviously records a live stream with you.
Probably go to an exhibition or read.
Perfect. Those were excellent answers. This concludes the TezTalks lightning round. Let's get back into it. Now that we've talked about the HEK Basel and MOMI partnerships and the community-based events and initiatives your team has been involved in, I'd like to zoom out a little bit and talk about the state of blockchain art, both here in the Tezos ecosystem and beyond, a little bit more broadly. First off, for Aleksandra, what is the current state of the global blockchain art scene in 2026 as you see it?
Boom. I've probably answered this question like 5 times this month. It's the consolidation phase. So I feel like the way things felt in 2019 was excitement, experimentation, meeting new friends. 2020, it was acceleration. Like you would have already some really good traction on Nifty Gateway. Like there was some artists picking up steam. Trevor Jones, people were already like kind of like leading the way. 2021, when just nothing made sense, right? Like it was just this one era of craziness. 2022, there were still quite a lot of very strong projects, releases, new mechanics. 23, 24, we kind of like stayed very grounded. 25 felt different. I think this was like the markets and the political situation heavily started affecting the broader crypto world. You saw a lot of legislation, you saw a lot of adoption. Like people started talking about blockchain in a more serious and practical way. There was much less traction, I would say, in speculative like PFP NFTs. But then at the same time, for example, on Tezos, we saw the strongest year of sales over 2 years last year. But at the same time, you see a lot of platforms closing down. The business wasn't maybe long-term viable. And so everyone starts thinking, how do we preserve this long term? And I think that's when sort of like these questions start really being serious. And that is a lot of things our team thinks about, and like the partners we speak to is things that we're doing. How do we start making them more sustainable? And so I think this is the state where we are right now. The value proposition is as clear as ever. Like, digital assets have a proof of ownership that didn't exist. And when I look back 10 years ago, when there was one digital show in half a year and everyone would pee their pants and run and be so excited because finally something's happening, now it's definitely the future. Like, you have 3 new galleries opened in Lower East Side over the last year. You have Canyon opening, you have Solo CSV, Dataland, UBS Art Museum in Germany. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of space for digital art. You had Node opening, Beeple Studios. Like, you cannot argue that digital art is here to stay anymore. The real question is, how do we build a model where the ecosystems that want to continue supporting artists and art in the blockchain and preserve its individuality, how do we work together to make that happen long term? So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. And in the sort of quest to realize that vision that you're describing, what's the biggest problem that those sort of building the global blockchain art ecosystem still need to solve?
I think there are several things. First and foremost, not everyone is a collector. Like, it might be a surprise to someone, but not everyone is a collector in the sense that they're going to go and they're going to dive and find the artists. And you need to create formats in which it's accessible and easy to understand why this is cool. And so we've been working quite a bit with the object team, and they were always sort of like coming up with really new, interesting projects. They have a lot more in the pipeline. I think that is incredibly important because at the end of the day, platforms like NBA Top Shot were some of the biggest drivers, or CryptoKitties. Like, they're simple, yes, but they were some of the biggest drivers for adoption, because if you want to bring more people in, you need simple things that later trickle down into like the more substance and depth. So I think that is the approach that many people have been exploring. Obviously, then also the technology side. Some people argue you have to abstract blockchain. It's a yes and no, because then why do we need blockchain at all? Why not use Facebook Marketplace? So I think you still have to have like the ethos and the key values that decentralization stands for there. And then the third, which I see as one of the biggest challenges, is working together. I think that there's a lot of this rhetoric, us versus them, within communities, within other blockchain ecosystems. And we don't have the bandwidth to do that.
Yeah.
When someone is just trying to make it about themselves, it undermines the collective effort all of us spent years on building. And I think that's what I would love to bridge. And we do have some partnerships this year that are aiming to bridge sort of that gap.
Okay. And at the risk of making it all about ourselves, Vinciane, when you look at the global blockchain art scene that Aleksandra is describing, where do you think Tezos and its art ecosystem fit into that picture?
We've shared before in terms of like the level of support that the Tezos Foundation has given to the art scene, the number of partnerships with institutions that have also happened and are happening this year, as well as the experimentation. And I think all of those contribute to making sure that Tezos is really a place for experimentation. It is a place for amazing, groundbreaking artists to share and sell their work. Mm-hmm. And it's also a blockchain that has been embraced by the arts at all different levels. I think from emerging artists who are just coming out of university, perhaps still in university, or studying arts on the side, to artists who have built their voice, built a style, but are still building their collector network, to artists who are showing at MoMA, like Sasha Styles. And And I think we see that reflected as well in the number of institutions who have used the Tezos blockchain for their various projects and activations. So MoMA actually chose the Tezos blockchain back in 2022 with working with Rafik Anadol. We also worked with, LAS also chose the Tezos blockchain working with Ian Cheng. I think that was also in 2022. And our partnerships in 2025 and 2026 just continue to show, I think, that level of interest that there is in the Tezos ecosystem, in the artists creating on Tezos, and the curators kind of contextualizing those artists and creating wonderful, I think, stories around everything that's happening in this space.
Okay. And Aleksandra, you gave us quite a thorough timeline of sort of the story of blockchain art there a moment ago. In a world where public sentiment toward blockchain art has shifted so significantly over the past few years, which has obviously had quite a big impact on the market for this type of work, why has the Tezos art ecosystem shown so much resilience in the face of that? Like, what is it about this art community that has allowed that creativity and innovation that you were both talking about to thrive?
I think it's that sense of togetherness, like there's a shared past. I think it's also heavily, and I see it affecting many things, it's heavily the support being injected into the ecosystem, and not like when we see other ecosystems trying to cultivate culture, the first thing you see is an airdrop or like this max mint thing to pop transactions. Like we saw certain chains do that. Like they just go and they try to increase and do as many transactions as possible and call it creative economy, and then it dies in a month, and then they replicate it with another platform. And all these approaches are to maximize investors' money. And I think the fact that our Trilitech arts team, the foundation investments and grants, they hold up to the legacy that that's not how you build culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's like that shared understanding across the whole organization, from Arthur to like to Tezos Commons, that art is not about that. Art is not about like pumping bags or like overhyping things. You cultivate it over a long period of time. You work like diligently, and that's why you have people like myself and Vinciane who have backgrounds in both sort of like the traditional markets, experience with platforms, experience curating, creating art ourselves, collecting art, because you have to wear many hats to understand what different members of the ecosystem are going through. And I think one uncomfortable truth that a lot of these like big influencer people in our blockchain art space failed to realize is that without the Tezos ecosystem, the movement and growth will slowly die, because the platforms of supports that you see on other blockchains are not tailored to be able to facilitate interactions and growth for smaller artists. I'm not saying that Object does all the heavy lifting in the ecosystem, but if you think about it, the amount of curation, the amount of hand-holding, the amount of these like even these like micro beyond grants, if you think about it, it's very hand-hold approach. Actually having like curators on the team working at scale, Object Labs residencies, all these tiny small little things, they build that bigger foundation. Like having these communal meetups from Buenos Aires to Berlin, this is what a healthy ecosystem should look like. Doing write-ups, like we've been working with Now Media, with Roger Dickerman, to kind of spotlight art, bring different communities to showcase that art, put it on the pedestal. And this is how you create an artist's career trajectory, having these different touch points. It's a long way to go. We have to find a model that's more or less sustainable. I always advocate that, if you need to pay your rent, you should get a job. But if you want art and you want to get sort of like grow within your art practice, there are a lot of opportunities. And some people do make it, like RJ, for example. He quit his job last summer after like he was successful in Object, through the different exhibitions that he had, through the different curations. So there are success stories, but you have to always be realistic as well.
Okay. And as we continue to work towards that, what's next for Vinciane, Aleksandra, and the Trilitech Arts team? Do you have any other exciting rollouts or announcements in the works?
Always. We've already actually teased one of them coming to TezDev in March with the art show, and then there are a lot more, but most of which we can't share quite yet. But there's always something happening in the Tezos ecosystem, whether it's our team or Objects team or Teos team as well, Edit Art, etc. I don't know, Alex, is there anything you want to share now?
Well, I think something that was shared was a year ago. Some of our programs take over a year. A year ago, we've approached Retro Editions to see if they want to collaborate on producing a work about pixel rugs for Travis Smalley. And over the course of the year, everyone worked collaboratively at bringing it together. And right now on his website, it's already pre-orders. And I think the publishing will happen in the next few months. And so we will likely have an event, like a book signing event for this. So that's another wonderful culmination of a year's work finally coming to life.
And speaking of other projects that take a while to come to life, last year we also announced a partnership with the Processing Foundation to release a couple of educational videos about the new P5.js release in collaboration with artists. And you'll see some of those coming to their YouTube channel also in the coming weeks and months.
Okay. And for people who want to keep apprised of what's going on, who want to hear about these things when they come to fruition, where's the best place for people to keep their eyes peeled?
Art on Tezos.
Okay.
We are Art on Tezos _ on Twitter, Art on Tezos on Instagram, and we've also recently launched a Discord. So if you want to join in for some interesting conversations about art, Web3, digital tools, etc., we'd love to see you there.
Yeah, we're still monitoring the whole Face ID thing. So if by the time you listen to this, we canceled our Discord, don't get too upset. But Instagram and X are there to stay. So
Okay.
we're good.
We could go on all day. I have many questions that I didn't have time to get to, but we're coming to the end of our time here. To all our viewers, if you'd like to get in touch with us, our social media contacts can be found at tezoscommons.org/TezTalks. We'd love to hear from you. Aleksandra and Vinciane, thanks so much for joining us today. It's always awesome to speak to the folks dedicating their time and effort to bring Tezos art to the larger art community. To everyone out there in Tezos land, thanks for joining us on TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons, and our awesome guests have been Vinciane Jones and Aleksandra Art. Now let's go visit HEK Basel and Momi.
Thank you so much, Stu.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Bye.